Berman Supreme. I am officially endorsing Berman Supreme for President of the United States. Why? Because we need a friendly fascist in the White House. We need a ruler, a tyrant, who's going to do so, and be so, kindly. We need free ponies for everybody. A free pony for everyone, for you, and you. We need mandatory toothbrushing laws so that we can have the best dental hygiene in the world. You know, the Brits, they may have universal health care, but we have the best teeth in the country, or in the entire world. And that's why we need Berman Supreme to be President of the United States. Hey guys, it's Mike, and that was... Hey guys, it's Mike, and that was, of course, a joke. If you actually think I'm endorsing Berman Supreme for President of the United States, you've got to be out of your mind. Look, he's a really funny dude. He's a great dude. And I think, in all honesty, he's something we need in politics, but he wouldn't make a good president. His whole campaign is satire. It has been the entire time, right? Berman's a great guy. He's a funny dude. And he's certainly an endorser of liberty. And he's a great candidate in that sense. But he's also not a serious candidate. And never was. He never was meant to be. Dude's an anarchist. Dude doesn't actually believe that government should exist. And I'm not dissing on anarchists. But Berman's not a serious candidate. Never was. So, who then am I endorsing? Because you guys know, probably by now, I'm definitely not a Democrat. I'm a big fan of the Second Amendment. I believe in cutting government spending. I'm not a fan of their, universal federal laws. I support, in fact, abolishing the federal minimum wage and abolishing the vast majority of government programs and institution, at the very least on the federal level, if not on the state level as well. And maybe even at the local level. Let's see. So, who do I actually endorse? Well, I endorse Jacob Hornberger. Hornberger is a fantastic candidate. He's a great man. He's a wonderful, principled, very intelligent individual. And I think he could spread the values of the party, of the ideology as a whole, of libertarianism, much farther than most other candidates. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump because, well, the things I did agree with him on in 2016, most of them he's backed down on, or, lied about in general. For example, he said, "The 8-year assault on your Second Amendment freedoms has come to an astonishing end," or whatever. Bump stock ban, endorsing red flag laws, supporting raising the legal age to purchase a rifle, and in addition, perhaps even supporting the idea behind closed doors that we should reinstate the 1990s assault weapons ban and make it even stronger. Dude is a lifelong Democrat, for God's sake. Okay? No, I'm not endorsing Donald Trump, and I don't really care whether I come from a conservative family or not. Another example. He's a protectionist. I believe in free trade. Tariffs, they're destroying large parts of our economy. They're raising our prices. They're not helping U.S. consumers. They're not helping U.S. producers. They're not really helping Americans in general at all. They're just, they're making the world economy really hate the United States. Another thing, not only signed into law, but bragged about signing into a law, a bill that came from Congress that, was thousands of pages and had tons and tons of excess legislation to help big lobbyists, and he bragged about signing it, and he bragged about the fact that it raised the age to purchase tobacco products. And not only that, but he has heavily regulated the vaping industry, and he supports perhaps banning certain flavors of e-cigarettes. The man is not in favor of individual liberty, especially not civil liberties. With that being said, he does do some good. We're negotiating our way out of terrible trade agreements, trying to get other countries to pay their part in things like NAFTA, where the United States is paying the vast majority, and they're not helping out. NATO too, the United Nations, these things, they're terrible agreements, and the U.S. is paying for the vast majority of them while not receiving nearly as much back. So that's one thing I can appreciate about him. Another thing is his deregulation policy, which has really helped the country, right? And we can tell in general that he's a very pro-business president, because the second he took office, basically, the second he was inaugurated, the Dow and the market in general, it skyrocketed. So, business in general reacts well to a pro-business president. So there's that as a benefit. So I don't hate him. I'm not a never Trumper, but I'm not a Trump worshiper. And I say in general, in 2016, he was definitely more good than bad, but as of now, I'd say he's more bad than good. But voting for a Democrat won't help either. Those guys are admittedly anti-gun. Look at Beto O'Rourke, who says, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, we're going to take your AK-47. Why the hell would I want to vote for someone who's so anti-gun? Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, they support very large, very expensive federal government policies. I don't want a large federal government, and the United States federal government is $23 trillion in debt. We can't afford any of the things they're proposing. All they're going to do is drag us even deeper into debt. So voting for a Democrat really won't help. Voting for Donald Trump is voting for a Democrat, just a little more moderate one, kind of like a Biden-crat or an Obama-crat. So what other alternatives are there? Well, the vast majority of Americans, I would say, believe in something called the non-aggression principle. Otherwise, like Ayn Rand, for example, who did not consider herself a libertarian, but nonetheless referred to it as the non-initiation of force theory. Or principle, rather. It is simple. The idea, the logic that you learned in kindergarten, that it is wrong to hurt other people or take their stuff, right? It's wrong to commit acts, any act that does not have the explicit consent of the individual you are acting against. So if you're stealing, obviously you don't have the consent of the original owner to take their property, and so you're stealing. If you're raping, you don't have consent to sex. If you're murdering, obviously most people don't give consent to die, right? If you're assaulting, unless you're like boxing or wrestling or even playing football, something like that, if you're assaulting people, chances are most likely that they also don't have consent. Consensual assault is called boxing. Consensual rape is called sex. Consensual theft is called borrowing, right? There's a big, big difference in society, and as there should be, between acts with consent and acts without consent. And that is, at its base, at its core, what the non-aggression principle is about. So, when someone smokes a joint, that's consensual, right? So that should be legal. When someone rents their body out for something like, sex work, prostitution, that is consensual, right? So there's no reason that should be illegal either. So that's the whole core basis of the non-aggression principle is the idea that it's wrong to initiate physical force against people who are not initiating physical force, right? Force is acceptable only as an act of defense for oneself, for one's property, against some other individual who is committing an act of aggression, be it physical or other things like fraud, as I mentioned, theft, and, things like pedophilia also count as aggressive acts because children are not capable of consent. So that sort of gets rid of the idea, the straw man, the terrible straw man that's completely not true, that libertarians are those who believe, what if the child consents though? Children are not capable of consent. And that's why, fuck you, Arvin Vohra. Go to hell. Get out of the Libertarian Party. You are a plague, not a good candidate. You're destroying our reputation. You don't belong here. And that is why you deserved to get kicked out of the LNC. I don't care whether you're a member of the Mises Caucus or not. I don't care whether you're an ANCAP or not, right? Those are my leanings. I'm a Rothbardian, but I don't care, right? I don't care, because you're a pedophile sympathizer. Not only that, but you joked about shooting up a fucking school board. Who the hell does that? No, Arvin Vohra is the worst. Worse than Donald Trump, worse than anything the Democratic Party could possibly produce. He's evil. He does not deserve the nomination, right? Next candidate, Adam Kokesh. Great man overall. He's got some great ideas, but I've mentioned Kokesh multiple times already on this channel. Kokesh is, well, his ideas aren't plausible, right? No matter what you do, you cannot, through one executive order, abolish the entire federal government. The president, first of all, the president doesn't have that power. The United States has checks and balances. The president can't get rid of the entire federal government. Second of all, most executive officials wouldn't follow through with those orders. Right? Even if you fire 90% of them and rehire a bunch of them, and you just can't do that with one executive order. It may be possible to abolish the federal government in 15 years, very slowly privatizing or localizing every aspect of it, but it's just not plausible to do it with one executive order, let alone even in 4 or 8 years. Mr. Kokesh, I love you, but you're kind of delusional. Next candidate, and this woman was actually one of my very favorites, Kim Ruff. I love Kim Ruff. I love her message. I think she's amazing. I'm so sad to hear that she dropped out of the election, out of the race, because she's someone we really needed, and she would have pushed the party so super far. And she was definitely, I regret taking her in as my second choice. She should have been my first choice, because she was amazing. Jacob Hornberger is, of course, now my first choice. Dan Berman. Awesome dude. Anti-tax advocate, one of the best you'll ever know, because whether you guys like it or not, we need to abolish the federal income tax. We need to abolish so many taxes, because the average American, pays out more than 50% of what they earn to the federal government. And that's obviously not just in income tax, but that's in sales tax, property tax, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid tax, a bunch of different taxes that are added on in addition to the income tax. And most people aren't keeping track of how much they're giving to the IRS, but they're giving so much. So we absolutely need to do away with the income tax and with it the IRS. And that is why I really appreciate Dan Taxation is Theft Berman. And I love his little yellow hat, and I love his tie. He's such an awesome character, and he does Instagram live streams regularly, so if you guys want to, pop in, see what he's all about, definitely check him out. Let's see. Next up, I have to admit, I don't know of very many of the other candidates. Max Abramson, I've talked to quite a few times on Twitter, and he's a great dude too, and I think he'd make a fantastic president. He'd make a fantastic, candidate for the Libertarian Party, and I think he could make it really far. After all, he is one of the only members of the party who is already a lawmaker, who already works in legislation, and has a full-time job separate to it. So Max Abramson has a whole bunch accomplished already, and he's young too, right? He's not an old fart. Then again, they're all young. They're all, if you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, they're at least in their 50s, if not, Biden and Bernie and Trump are all in their 70s. It's ridiculous how old these people are and how long they've been in politics or in business or in law or anything like that. It's good to have someone fresh, right? Max has only served a few terms, and he's done a great job in his few terms as a representative, as a state representative, and I think he would make a great nominee as well. Now, talking about, let's see, we've also got Joe Jorgensen, Sam Robb, and a whole bunch of other ones who I unfortunately don't know about because they haven't gotten enough attention. So let's see. But those are my main candidates. And John McAfee. Now there's a character. Never mind the fact that he may or may not have murdered his neighbor. Never mind the fact that he has numerous allegations and is running from authorities in multiple countries. He's running for president of the United States. This man has some of the most interesting ideas, and he's such an interesting figure, someone who everyone should follow because he's so interesting. He's I just said interesting 4 times. It's literally the only descriptive word I have for McAfee. Interesting. The most interesting candidate I have ever seen. For those of you who don't know McAfee's background, he's a cybersecurity expert. He created the company McAfee, which he sold in the late 90s. He shouldn't have done that because if he didn't sell it, he would be a multi-billionaire. But when he sold it, his net worth was around $300 million. And then after the 2008 recession, it's now less than $10 million. So he's suffered significant losses. He's certainly still a wealthy individual, but he's not one of the ultra-rich, wealthy elitists, So yeah, there's McAfee for you. Running from the law, multimillionaire, cybersecurity expert. Who else? There's a whole bunch of people. If you know more, let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, share this video. Let me know who is your favorite of all our candidates. Are you a Trumpster? Are you a Tulsi crowd, a Yang gang? Are you a Biden bro, a Bernie bro? Let's see, who else is in the race? Julian Castro dropped out, Cory Booker dropped out, so there's not a lot left. But yeah, one person I really don't want to be the Libertarian Party nominee for President of the United States is Lincoln Chafee. Now, I agree with Lincoln Chafee on probably more than 80% of the issues, but he's a lifelong politician, and he's swung left, he's swung right, he's gotten kind of independent. He hasn't been a libertarian for more than a year. So I guess, and he's another one of those people who, he doesn't mention the Nonaggression Principle. He's more of one of those fiscally conservative, socially liberal type libertarians. Is that really who we want to be our nominee? Again, we want another not-so-libertarian to be our nominee? Please, for the love of God. No. Okay, listen, right, whether or not I like him, I'm still probably going to vote for him if he is the nominee. Right, I would have voted for Gary Johnson if I was old enough. That doesn't mean I'm happy with them being the nominee. Ultimately, I would consider them to be the lesser of 3 evils at the most. But, they suck, ultimately. Gary Johnson, what is Aleppo? Whoever the hell the guy in 2008 was, this party hasn't done a very good job nominating people. And that's gotta stop.
Red.